before I start and do some introductions, I just need to check the audio to make sure that everything is working properly. So just open the stream on my mobile phone and we'll check that everything is working properly. So yeah, we're live on YouTube at the moment, so okay, I think the audio is good. Just trying to check. Yeah, sounds fine on YouTube. Let's check on Twitch as well. And here we go. Yeah, I think it sounds good as well. Great, okay. So yeah, we are good to go. And I'm losing my voice already. Not a good start for my first stream, but yeah, I'll get used to it. Let me just take that off and just set up some things here. Okay, just some water, and then we will start do the introductions and talk a little bit about what I would like to do with this component. I'll explain exactly some of the things that I would love to be doing and why am I doing this. Let me just drink quickly. Okay, so quick introduction. My name is Abdurrahman. Officially, I am a video editor, but I have always loved programming and software development. I started learning programming as a teenager when I was 15 or 14 years old, something like that. And I have been like at some point I actually even considered like going into like getting a college degree in computer science, but for several reasons I just didn't pursue it, and I focused mainly on media and filmmaking. But then through filmmaking I sort of started getting back into programming, and initially started like writing scripts in Python and things like that, and then I got interested in visual effects, so I started learning a little bit more about scripting and like programming, like making like programs for like pipeline stuff and things like that. and then all of that sort of rekindled my interest in programming. And when the pandemic started and when we went into lockdown, I started looking at Mozilla Developer Network's documents, the MDN web docs, and I started getting back into HTML, CSS, and then started learning a bit more about JavaScript. And I started playing around, and I sort of fell back in love with programming. And since then, basically, I've decided that I actually want to pursue programming as a career, and I've been learning the past year and building some exercises and things like that, trying to basically add stuff to my portfolio. And then eventually I actually started building an app that I called Threader. It's a very simple app that I built basically as a practice app, basically, and all it does is if you want to like write a thread on Twitter, what you usually need to do is you either basically split the work on the tweet and start typing it one by one in the app, in the Twitter app itself, or on the Twitter website, and it gets a bit tedious. So I thought about, like, what if I made an app where you actually type like an entire text, however you just like to type it, and then it will take care of actually splitting it and publishing it to Twitter. So this is like a deployment of the front end only of the app. I had the entire app deployed at one point, but I had to take it down for just because it was costing me a lot of money to actually keep it up. So I'm working on something else, and I'll be redeploying it again. But at the moment, I only have the front end available on my GitHub repository. The repository is called Threader. I might post it into chat if someone actually wants to take a look at it. So what it does basically is let's get any piece of text. Give me a second and I'll just bring up some text, and if I now paste this text here, as you can see, it splits it into several tweets, and then all you need to do is just publish the thread, and it will go to your Twitter account once you actually give it permission to actually publish tweets and images and stuff like that to your Twitter account. You can add images, as I said. So if I get any image from here, just need to make sure that I can actually use the image. So yeah, let's use this one. This is an image, my own image, so should be fine to use. So now if the backend was actually connected, you would be able to just hit publish thread. It would ask you to log into your Twitter account, and then it will just take a couple of seconds depending on how many tweets you have and if you've added images or not. But eventually it will be published, and it will tell you that everything's published on to your Twitter account. So one of the things that I have managed to actually implement in my app is the ability to highlight hashtags and user mentions and URLs in the thread display area. So if I type, for instance, hello AM Saeed, which is my Twitter handle, as you can see, it gets highlighted here. But as you can notice, it doesn't get highlighted in the input area itself. That's because basically what I'm using at the moment is just a simple HTML text area, and the HTML text areas do not have any way of highlighting hashtags and things like that. So what I started doing is I started actually looking for maybe first I actually looked at what Twitter does to highlight the hashtags, and what I found out is that it actually uses a content editable div. So if you look at, I think it is this one. This div, I think, is the one that it has content editable too. I'm not sure if it's the only one that has that div. I think it's the only one, yeah. So this is the main one that actually has the content editable attribute added to it to allow basically users to actually add hashtags and user mentions and URL, and then the input area would actually highlight the text. So when I thought about trying to implement that, it felt like it's gonna be a bit too complicated to actually try to implement that myself. So at the beginning I thought maybe like I'll just try to find something that achieves this without me having to implement it. But I looked around, I couldn't find anything that is done specifically for highlighting hashtags or mentions or anything like that. So what I ended up doing is trying to use one of the rich text editors available for JavaScript and React. So there was Quill, which is an amazing rich text editor, but again, it's not designed specifically for that. So I needed to actually modify it a little bit to make it work. I think there was another one called TinyMCE. Yeah, again, rich text editor works well with React, but again, it's a rich text editor. It's not intended to be used as a tweet input area, so I would have had to actually adapt it to my needs. I tried to do that with Quill, didn't work really well, but then TinyMCE worked. But eventually, what I didn't like about using rich text editor is that it sort of comes with a lot of extra stuff that I don't really need. So I ended up basically going back to trying to implement the text, the tweet input area or the thread input area as just a content editable div, and just modify it as the user type, and like using event handlers and things like that to actually make it work. So yeah, and this is basically the main reason why am I doing it. I want something that is built specifically for typing tweets, not a rich text editor that has a lot of functionality that I'm not going to use at the end, because what I'm trying to do is to make the app as light as possible. So a dedicated component that only has the features that I need would be the best solution in this case. So what I started doing is I started actually building like a simple prototype, just using plain JavaScript, because what I wanted to find out is exactly what would be in actually required to achieve something like that. Because although it might look a bit simple, it actually involves a lot of stuff. And when I started building the prototype, I found out that there are a lot of things that I actually didn't think I would need to do, that I found out that I would actually need to do if I want this component to work well on several browsers and on desktop as well as mobile phones, because my intention is to have my app working on both desktop browsers and mobile phone, because it's supposed to be a progressive web app, which at the moment it actually is a progressive web app. So once I deploy the backend again, you can actually go to the website and download it on your mobile phone and use it as an app, like as a native app. It's not exactly native, but it works close to native apps on your mobile phones. So yeah, so this is, let me actually show you the prototype that I built. It's not feature complete, of course. There are a lot of things that don't actually work well. I'll try to zoom in a little bit just to make sure that you can see everything. Let me check that it's visible enough. Yeah, maybe. I'm sorry for the eyesore. It's it uses a light background. Yeah, I usually prefer dark backgrounds, but for this one I just couldn't bother. I just left it as white because I'm not going to use it. But yeah, as you can see, if I type here, it actually highlights it. For instance, so again you can type hashtags. As I said, like, it has a lot of bugs. It's not feature complete. It doesn't actually do everything that the Twitter input area does. And what I found out is that ultimately what I'll need to do is I'll need to have a lot of I'll need to basically build the component to sort of work in different ways on Chromium based browsers, from how it works on Firefox, and I will need to make it work. Like, I'll need to a different implementation for how to actually get it working on mobile phones as well. So it involves a lot of work. It's not like I'll implement the logic once and it will work across everything on desktop browsers and mobile browsers as I would expect it. This is not how it works. Like, if you actually go to the prototype and go to the source, you'll find that there's like Firefox module, there's a different module for Chrome or Chromium based browsers, and I haven't actually started implementing the mobile version in the prototype because I think it's gonna be a bit more complicated compared to the desktop ones. So yeah, this is for the actual component. We're going to start also with the desktop based browsers, and then from there we will actually look at how to basically implement it on mobile phones as well. So the plan is basically, and of course you're welcome to let me know if you think there might be a better idea for how to do that. But the plan is that I'll start by implementing the Chromium, the module for Chromium-based browsers, seeing that this would cover Google Chrome, Chromium itself, Brave, and some other and Microsoft Edge as well. All of these are basically Chromium-based browsers. So we have a lot of browsers that are actually based on Chromium. So we're sort of, if we start by implementing the module for these browsers, we've managed to cover basically a lot of platforms. Then we'll build, what I'll do afterwards is then I'll start taking the functions from the Chromium based module and start adding them to the Firefox module to see if, basically to test which ones actually work and which ones do not, and then start basically improving the Firefox module, and anything that it works basically in a common way between the two platforms, then we'll sort of separate it into a common a platform agnostic module basically. This way we cover both of them, and then eventually we'll get to the mobile based browsers and see how we can take it from there. But all of this is basically the general plan. But what we need to do is actually figure out how, or exactly what do we need to do, because since all we're doing here is building a component that actually works similar to how the Twitter input area works, then we have sort of like a blueprint for what we need to do. So what we need to do first is actually add all of the, start typing things into the Twitter input area and figure out exactly how it behaves and how it interacts and how it handles users typing, pasting text, deleting text, doing all of the things that you would normally do when you're typing when you're typing, adding a tweet in Twitter, and then use this basically as a plan for how we're going to build the component. One thing that I am definitely going to do for this component is that I'm going to actually use test-driven development. Usually I'm not someone who wants to use, who actually thinks that you should use test-driven development for every single project that you build, because sometimes all you need to do is just play around and figure things out. For instance, with the prototype, I didn't use test-driven development because there was no point. I'm just playing around, figuring stuff out. But also for some production projects, test-driven development might not make a lot of sense in some cases. If you're not 100% sure what are you expecting from your project. But I think for this project specifically, it lends itself really well to test-driven development, because we have well-defined behaviors, which is basically we want our component to behave exactly as the Twitter input area behaves. So it makes sense to build tests that actually ensure that the component actually behaves in that way. So this is what we're going to do. But for now, all I'm going to do today is I'm going to start actually playing around with the the Twitter input area. There's not going to be much coding today, I know. I could have done that on my own, but I thought it might be a good thing to share, to see how I actually think about when I start on like a project like that. One thing I need to note here, I am like very new to like programming something to that scale. As I said, I've always liked programming, I've always enjoyed programming, but I've never actually worked professionally as a programmer. I'm hoping that soon enough I'll be able to get a job as a software developer, but at the moment I'm not. So what I'm sharing here is what I do. I'm not trying to say that you should do the same. I'm not trying to say that you should learn from me. This is not a tutorial. This is what I do. I'll probably make a lot of mistakes. So you're definitely welcome to actually correct me and share what you think. I'm sure there will be some people with more experience than what I have, who can actually tell me if I do something wrong, and I'm of course willing to listen and learn and improve, but I'm also sure that I might like have a couple of things here and there that might help someone who's less experienced than me, which means that they're probably very new to programming. I'm not new to programming, I don't have a professional experience. So some people who are completely new or just starting from scratch, some of the things I do might be helpful to them. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and if I have an answer, I'll definitely try to help you as much as I can. Let me just get a drink, because yeah, been speaking for almost half an hour now, and it's I'm starting to lose my voice again. Okay, so let me first do this. Let me get my text editor. I don't want that one. Just where the heck is it? Close folder. Let's get just a simple text, and I'll split my screen quickly. Yeah, here we go. So as I said, so how Twitter, I think I might need to increase my my text size. Yeah. Yeah, I think that should be fine. And yeah, so how Twitter input area behaves. Okay, so I'll test a lot of things and add them like basically to figure out the behavior of this text area. This is based on a lot of like testing that I've done when I was actually building the prototype. So there are a lot of things that I know that again, normally when you start thinking about building a component like that, you wouldn't actually think about them, but because I've actually built the prototype, I sort of know that there are certain behaviors that I should expect from this, from a tweet input area because this is basically how the Twitter input behaves. So normally we all know that if I type text that doesn't match any patterns, like whether it's a hashtag pattern or a mention pattern or a URL pattern, it's not going to highlight it in any way. It's just gonna look like normal text. So we'll definitely add that here. So text that doesn't match any patterns should not be highlighted. And I will, let's make it wrap so it doesn't actually go into doesn't scroll basically horizontally. So if I type a hashtag, like if I type word like hello at Saeed 1989, when I start typing a hashtag, it matches it, a mention, sorry. When I start typing user mention, it should be highlighted once it matches the pattern. So just to actually highlight how it behaves here, so when you type the @ character, it doesn't actually start highlighting because Twitter doesn't treat a word as a mention until you actually start typing some characters. So let's say if I type a letter, it treats it automatically as a mention and highlights it. What about a number? Again, works well. What about a non-word character? So something like a dash. So as you can see, if we have a dash, it doesn't treat it as a mention. Again, any sort of non-word character is not treated as a mention. So to maybe add some notes here to sort of clarify this behavior that we've actually added, that is to be expected from our component that we're going to build in the later streams. So when I start typing the @ character, the input doesn't highlight the word. If I add any word character, and I'll explain here, these are characters that match the regex pattern word immediately after the @ character, then the user mention will be highlighted. And the reason why I say it's any characters that matches the \w like lowercase w regex pattern is because if you add @ and then underscore, it actually highlights it, because underscore is considered a word character. So in here it's considered as a user mention, because you can have a username that includes underscores, but not a dash, for instance, not a plus, not or equal. All of these are non-word characters. If I add a non-word character, i.e. characters that match the regex pattern, and this is uppercase W, not lowercase. So in regex, the \uppercase W is the non-word character. It's the opposite of the \lowercase w. So such as dash / equal, even spaces are considered non-word characters. Actually, let me check that. I'm not. I think it is. I just need to make sure. So if we add here non-word character, yeah, space is considered non-word character as well. So this website is really good. It's called regex101.com. You can actually type regular expression patterns here and test it, and it has different flavors, because the way regular expressions are implemented across different programming language is a bit different. Like the general implementation, I think, is close enough, but there are some details that might be different between one language and another. So I usually, when I go here, because I'm using JavaScript, I just select the ECMAScript flavor before I actually test my patterns. But yeah, as you can see, a space is actually considered a non-word character. So yeah, let's close that one. So yeah, leave page. So let's get back here. So yeah, if I add a non-word character immediately after the @ character, then the text is not going to be highlighted. Okay, let's test something else. What happens if we start typing @ and add some word characters, but then follow it with a non-word character? So as you can see, it keeps the sequence of word characters and the @ character highlighted, but then it actually removes the highlighting from the word character. And then now if you type any text, it actually treats it as a regular text, not as a user mention. So it highlights anything that comes after the @ up until the first non-word character. So let's add that as also as something that we expect. If I type sequence of word characters after the add character, they will all be highlighted if I follow them by a non-word character, then starting from this non-word character, everything that follows it will not be highlighted. So let's, for example, at am Said dash 1989, the text at am Said will be highlighted, but the text dash 1989 will not. Okay, so as you can see, what we're doing right now is we're basically building what we can call sort of a design document. We are adding everything that we expect from our component, and in general this is usually something that it's good to sort of once you're done prototyping and trying a lot of different stuff, it's good to sort of define what exactly you're trying to do, because usually in the prototyping stage you're not 100% sure, but once you are done prototyping you have slightly better idea. In this case, because I am building something that already exists, so I have a very clear idea of what I need to do. So okay, let's test something else. I think mostly for the user mentions we are now okay. We have most of the behavior defined. The other stuff that are gonna come next, but they're slightly more complex behaviors that usually happen when you actually mix some of these elements together. So yeah, we'll look into that once we get there, but let's now look at hashtags because they mostly behave the same, but they have some differences. So let's say we have let's say we're using the hashtag 100 days of code, which is very famous on tech Twitter for people who are actually doing the 100 days of code challenge. So let's say I start typing the hashtag character. So as you can see, again, the hashtag character is not highlighted once you type the hash symbol on its own. So again, in this case it behaves exactly like the user mentioned. So what we're going to do is going to just copy this, and yeah, well, I'm using Vim, by the way, the Vim key bindings in VS Code. I've spent some time working with Vim, and I like the key bindings and the shortcuts. So when I went back to VS Code, I actually decided to stick to using it. So we'll go to this and replace it with the hashtag character, As you can see, it doesn't. So let's see what happens. If I start typing 100 days of code, you'll notice something very interesting. It's not highlighted. Let's show what happens if, before I go back and explain what's happening here. If I type @ as if I'm mentioning a user and type 100, it immediately starts highlighting it. But if I go back to the hashtag one and type it again, as you can see, it's not highlighted. If I start typing the letter D, 100 days of code, it gets highlighted. So what we notice from this is that hashtags behave a little bit differently on Twitter compared to user mentions. So with hashtags, you can't have a hashtag that is only made up of numbers, or the underscore, which is valid as a word character, as we said in the user mentions. You can use an underscore. You can also use an underscore in the hashtag, but the underscore on its own, or a number on its own, is not actually valid alone to be highlighted as a hashtag. So you have to have a letter, an actual letter, like one of the A to Z, either in lowercase or uppercase. So this is a unique behavior of the hashtag that doesn't exist with the user mentions. So we need to actually highlight that this behavior in hashtags. So as we said here, if I add any word characters immediately, and I noticed that I've actually made a mistake here. That's what happens when you type really quickly. Highlighted and okay, and let's repeat the same here. Let's change this as well to hashtag, and then the hashtag will be highlighted. You need to add a note here to indicate that you need to have like at least one letter. Maybe we just do note, and I have some highlighting for like words like note and to do, just because when I'm coding it makes it easier for me to see these characters. But yeah, it sort of helps us here. Note that to be highlighted a sequence of word characters that follow the hashtag. The hashtag character has to include at least one character from the set A to Z, which means basically, again, this is using regular expressions, so it means that we need to have at least one character that matches like a letter, whether it's a lowercase or uppercase letter. If the sequence of word characters only includes numbers and underscores, then it will not be highlighted as a hashtag. Actually, let me check one thing, because I don't know what happens if yeah, as I expected, like if you have numbers and an underscore, it will not be highlighted as a hashtag. So what I wrote there is actually correct. You have to have at least one single letter in there. Like if I add the letter A, it gets highlighted. If it's here, it gets highlighted. Just you need a letter after the hashtag character for this to work. So let's look at the, if I add a Nonword character, again, as I said here, if we add like a dash here, for instance, and then follow it with like word characters, it's not going to be highlighted because this non-word character breaks the hashtag. So you can't, like, Twitter is not going to highlight that. So let's just make sure that this behavior is defined correctly. Then the text is not going to be highlighted. And if I type a sequence of word characters after the it will be all highlighted. Yeah, again, as we said, like if we add something like this, for instance, 100 days of code, and then we add a dash, it breaks it, and anything that comes afterwards is not going to be highlighted. So let's again define that behavior here and make sure that we actually have it working properly. 100 days of code and 2021, for instance. So the text 100 days of code will be highlighted, but the text 2021 will not. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, we're sort of building basically the behavior that we expect. Let's see what happens with URLs, because honestly, I don't even, like, I'm not even sure what happens with URLs, because this is one of the things that I didn't test with my prototype, because it seemed a bit like, when I tried to look into it, it looked like Twitter does a little bit of like it handles it in a bit of a weird way. So I just didn't want to bother too much with it in my prototype, because I was trying to figure out exactly how to handle things like the hashtags and what happens when you format and all of these things. It's just there was a lot to do actually with hashtags and user mentions alone. So I just, I didn't want to waste more time by going as well into the URLs. So let's start playing around. Let's say that I type, for instance, hello www.twitter. Okay, so as you can see, it doesn't. What happens if I type https t, okay, www.t, okay. So it seems like that's very, oh wait, okay. So what happens if I do this? Huh, interesting. Hello, no, this. Huh. Trying to figure out exactly what does Twitter handle as. Okay. So I think they have some sort of But wait, then do they have a list of the how a URL is expected to end, like the .com, .net, things like that? That is defined, and they're looking for these. So if I do .dev, for instance, it works. If I do .com, I think it works. If I do hello.com, again, it works. Let's see what happens if I copy that, for instance, and pasted it here. Okay. What if I change this? Okay. So yeah, I think they have a pattern that looks for specific words that are actually allowed in a URL, and things like .com, .net, .dev. Basically, these are the things that are actually allowed in the URL. And if it doesn't find them in the URL, it doesn't matter. It's not going to treat it as a URL. So interesting. Doesn't matter if it doesn't have. Okay, it doesn't matter if it doesn't have the protocol defined, and it doesn't matter, of course, if it doesn't have www. We've already seen that. As long as it has one of these, it actually treats it as a URL. Okay, I just need another sip of my water. Again, another half an hour of speaking. Give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, I'm back. So yeah, I just looked at what these are actually called, and I found out that they're actually called top level domains. So if you type here top level domains, and you look here, you'll see that there's actually a list of top level domains, and these are basically what this part of the URL is actually called. So the part that ends the URL, the .com, .net, these are actually called top level domains. And if you look, there is a list of it here. So if we do .int, for instance, yeah, that works. If we do .apa, yeah, it actually works. And well, ads. Yeah, works. Dot app. Okay, so yeah, what I'm assuming is that the regular expression pattern that Twitter is using here to actually detect URLs actually has some sort of a list that includes all of these top level domains. So as long as a URL actually includes one of these top level domains, then basically the entire word is going to be treated as a URL. And there's something really interesting here. Unlike with hashtags and user mentions, as you can see, there are some non-word characters that are allowed in the URL. So things like dashes, which if we go back to and type a hashtag and then we add a dash, as you can see, it's not highlighted, and everything that comes afterwards is actually not highlighted as well. But with URLs, things are a bit different. You can actually use some non-word characters in a URL. So we can use dashes, we can use, I'm assuming we'll be able to use, yep. Let's just make sure that it's actually treating this. Yeah, it's still treating it as the same thing. It's a URL. It didn't change the last bit of it into a hashtag or something. It's just a URL. So if you close that and get back here, so yeah, URLs, in URLs, non-word characters are allowed, and the main defining character of a URL is that it looks like it has to include one of these top level domains, which means that we're going to have to find a way to actually use one of these, like figure out a way how to add all of these into in our regular expression pattern, because like as I said, there are some things that do not work. Like for instance, there are no top level domain for test. So if we do test, let's actually look for dot test. Oh, wait a second, there is a dot test. Okay, so I think they're not actually including all of the top level domains. They're only including some. Okay, so for instance, it seems like the special use domains are not actually, yeah, they are not actually used in the regular expression that Twitter uses. Oh wait, but onion is actually, so not all the special use domains are not included. It's just all of them are actually not included, but except for the .onion one. Not 100% sure why. So let's say .visa, for instance. Yeah, again, that one is working. So yeah, this is something that we're going to need to figure out. Basically, is how exactly we're going to add these top level domains into our regular expression without having to actually type them ourselves, because like it doesn't make any sense to actually include all of these, because like there are hundreds here, like as you can see, like all of these seem to be supported. Like whenever we type anyone, like if let's say again, yeah, it works. Trying to find something that NRW, for instance. No, not new, NRW. Okay, so yeah. Interesting. We have a top level. Yeah, we have a top level domain that's called .new. Restricted to use by NTT Japan. Let's try one of these restricted. Yeah, as you can see. Yeah, we'll need to figure out how we're going to actually do that, and which honestly I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do it, but yeah. One thing that you would have probably guessed this if we type something that is not a valid domain, it's still going to be highlighted. Like Twitter doesn't check if it's a valid domain or not. Let's actually see if, like, you never know. Yeah, server not found. So this is an invalid domain that if you click it, it's not going to take you anywhere, but Twitter doesn't check for that. It doesn't care. As long as it matches the URL pattern, it actually highlights it. So we need to add these things that we sort of found out into in here. So let's say for when I start typing a URL, it only gets highlighted if the URL, if it includes one of the valid and implement top level domains. And we'll just add this link in here so we can actually remember what this is, what this top level domains thing is about. Let's add some additional things here. So as we said, some non-word characters are allowed in a URL. So forward slashes. So let's say hello www.twitter.com. Is there a top level domain that ends with TW? Because so what? That is a bit weird, because like if you look at that, it actually highlights TW. Which is a bit weird. I'm not sure why it actually highlights it. This is what I'm talking about. Like one of the reasons why I didn't actually play with the URLs in my prototype is that they are a bit awkward, really. I'm not sure why TW is like github.tw. Yeah, TW doesn't seem to be one of the top level domains, but for some reason it gets highlighted. However, if you actually start typing something, it doesn't work. But yeah, let's see. So as we said, Okay, so we found something interesting here. So what if we do this? Huh. Okay, so trying to figure out, because the non-word characters seem to be only allowed in specific places. Like, what happens if we do this? GitHub. Yeah, this is fine. What if we do this? Okay. So it seems we need to figure out exactly okay, let's just keep typing here now, and we'll try to figure out exactly how it handles non-word characters in a URL. And dashes are allowed, however they are only allowed in specific areas, specific parts of the URL. Otherwise, the entire URL will not be highlighted. So this is something good to use the to do. We need to actually figure out where exactly are non-word characters not allowed. The URL doesn't need to be valid for it to be highlighted. If it matches the pattern, it will be highlighted regardless. Even if it points to nowhere. Okay. So yeah, this is something that, like, this bit specifically is something that we actually need to sort of figure out, because at the moment it just doesn't make any sense exactly. I'm not 100% sure exactly how it works, but let's go back to mentions and start adding some stuff here, because there's still other things that we haven't tested. So for instance, we haven't tested what actually happens when you start erasing characters, for instance. So hello am Saeed. So if I start removing characters, once the remaining characters no longer matches the pattern, they are going to be the highlighting will be removed. So let's add that as a behavior. When we erase characters from a highlighted user mention, the highlighting will be removed if the user mention no longer matches the pattern. And we need to copy that and add it to the hashtag as well. Oh, yeah, that's okay. Let's add it here, and okay, user mention, and C2W hashtag no longer matches the button, and then just do that. So yeah, as we said, like if we type 100 days of code, if we remove A and then D, as we remember, we said that the hashtags have to include at least one word character for it to be actually highlighted. So as we can see, once we remove that word character, it actually loses the highlighting. The highlighting ends up being removed. 1 second, let me just check something quickly here. Yeah, just making sure everything's working well with the stream. Okay, let's get back to it. Again, I'm assuming same happens with URLs. So if we type www Google, okay, see, I'm sure that the word Google is oh no, actually Google is top level domain. Okay. So yeah, at least that makes sense. Unlike the TW thing, which didn't make sense at all. So yeah, okay. So if we type, let's not use Google, just so now if we start erasing, .co is still a valid top level domain, so it should work fine. If I remove the O, it should remove the highlighting. Yes, as we expected. So again, that seems to be fine. And if we put that here, when we erase characters from highlighted hashtag, replace this one with a URL, find the next one and replace it. So again, basically erasing characters works sort of in the same way across all of them. So once basically the you erase enough character that the remaining ones do not match the pattern, the highlighting gets removed. Okay, I think that covers the basic behaviors, I'm assuming. So yeah, let's try to get into the more complex ones. Okay, let's see what happens if we have two hashtags next to each other. So if I start typing hashtag, then I add another hash symbol or hash character to type another hashtag. So let's say that I do that, hello build in public. So as we can see, as we expect, that gets highlighted properly. But what happens if I do that? Okay, interesting. If I add another hashtag character and I type a hashtag, even though this one is valid, like this build in public is a valid hashtag and 100 days of code is a valid hashtag, but because they both come one after the other with no Nonword character separating the two of them, like technically the hash character is a Nonword character, but because it's a special character for Twitter, it's treated differently. But yeah, anyway, like if we have like a dash here, they will both get highlighted, but if not, then none of them will be highlighted. So okay, this is something interesting. This is slightly more complex behavior. If we have two hashtags, two valid hashtags, let's just make sure that hashtags one after the other with no non-word character separating them from each other, then none of them will be highlighted. So, and just as an example here, build in public and 100 days of code, although okay, so that was interesting. Let's see what happens if we have the same thing with the user mentions. So if we have one user mention here and then we add another character and start typing another user mention, again, as we can see, none of them gets highlighted. So basically this one seems to be the same thing. If we have two valid user mentions one after the other, then none of them will be highlighted. So let's build in public M Saeed M Saeed, and then let's find the next one. So as we said, because they come next to each other. Actually, 1 second. Hashtags, and let's replace this. So yeah, both of these are not actually going to be highlighted. Okay, let's see what happens with the URLs, because I'm afraid of checking URLs because they behave in a very, very weird way. So as we said, this is valid, and then yeah, okay, so it makes sense. Okay, so the URLs things seem to be a bit different again, because as we said, as long as it includes one of those top level domains, it seems to be handled as a URL, even if it has like crazy shenanigans, as we can see here. Like we have two actual URLs. Of course, this is not a valid URL, so if you click it, you're not going to be actually able to, like, it's not going to take you anywhere. But from like a regular expression perspective, it's fine. It includes one of these top level domains, so it works, so it doesn't matter. I don't think it has any sort of special behavior here. So let's look a little bit more into these two behavior that we've defined here, because what we said is that like it has to be two hashtags that come after the other, or two user mentions that come after the other. But if we want to be more specific about it, it's if the word includes two, like more than one hash character, or more than one at character, it ends up being not highlighted. So if we type hello build in public and then we add another hash character, it gets removed. So let's define that behavior a little bit more clearly. So if we do this, to be specific, if the word includes two hash characters are separated only that are next to each other. Because if we do something like this, I think it's not. Oh, okay, then yeah, let's keep that. That are separated only by non-word word characters. So if like the two hashtag come after the other with only word characters in between the two of them, then it's not going to be highlighted by word characters. Then it is not going to be highlighted. Again, I can't seem to type properly. If you add another hash character to a hashtag that is already highlighted, then the highlighting, if I can type, will be removed. Okay, so again, as I said, we need to copy that and add it if the one. Okay, and we need to yeah, sorry, let's replace that. Only separated by Okay. To a user mention is already highlighted, then the highlighting will be removed again. So as I said, we've defined that. Let's actually save this document just so we don't lose it. For some reason saving it as an HTML. Let me just let's see. Okay, let's call it design document. Just, yeah. A bit of a unnecessarily fancy name, like no proper reason. Okay, did something weird when we saved it. Damn it. Okay, let me save it again as a... I'll just delete it and save it again as a text document, as I think it's yeah, it seems to be strange. Okay. No. Keeps doing weird stuff. Okay. Design document, maybe as a rich text. No. Why it does that? How about something else? Let's separate these ones like that. X. And I might try saving it as a markdown. Maybe that would sort of fix design document. Okay, yeah, that seems to have worked properly. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's keep going. So yeah, we stopped at this. So we said, yeah, if it includes two characters, two hash characters at any point, like if you add it at the middle, again, it doesn't matter, it will get removed. Yeah, that's correct. That works as expected. Same thing here. If we add it at the end, it gets removed. If we add it here, it gets removed. Doesn't matter if we add another one and another one, as long as basically the multiple ones that exist in the same word, only separated by word characters, then it's not going to be highlighted. Of course, if we start removing some of these, again, it goes back to matching the pattern. It gets highlighted. We don't need to actually highlight that behavior, because we sort of it's sort of included in that bit. When we erase character from a highlighted user mention, the highlighting will be removed. Okay, actually we need to sort of okay, so let's just add when we erase characters from a word that is not highlighted, it will get highlighted if it ends up matching the user mention pattern. Just to make it clear that like it works in both ways. Like if erasing characters makes the word do not match the pattern, then the highlighting will be removed. If it makes it match the pattern, then the highlighting will be added. No, let me just add this here. The hashtag. Okay. And again, same with the URLs. So let's just add this in here. Oh no. Let's add it here. Yes, character from order is not highlighted. If it ends up matching the URL pattern. Okay. Since we have I think links work in this way. I think let me, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, and let me check quickly. Seem to have forgotten how links work in I think it might be the other way around. I just need to check Markdown. Yeah, as I thought, it's the other way around. So we need this to be HTTPS and so yeah. Now this is a valid link. So we'll actually have the word top level domains as an actual link that we can click in the Markdown document and navigate to it in the browser. Okay, let's keep going because there's still some behaviors that we haven't actually covered. So let's look at what happens when we start actually mixing some of these together. So not two hashtags, not two user mentions, but actually what happens when we have one hashtag and one user mention next to each other. How does Twitter actually end up handling those? So let's look at this and say, for instance, we have build in public. What happens if I add @ Okay, so the hashtag is still highlighted. Okay, so that's interesting. So if I have a hashtag and then I add a user mention afterwards, even if they are not separated by anything, then in this case the @ is going to be treated as just a regular normal like non-word character. It's not going to be treated as the special character @ that Twitter handles. So like it's going to be treated as a dash or as a space or anything. So in this case it's going to be just treated as a non-word character. So let's add that here. 7, if we have a hashtag that is highlighted. Then we add an character immediately afterwards. Then the hashtag will continue to be highlighted, and the character will be treated normally as a non-word character. Which means that it won't be highlighted or any text that comes after it won't be highlighted. Okay, so let's see what happens in the opposite case. If we have a hashtag, a user mention, and then we follow it by a hashtag. Okay, so that seems to work in the same way. Let's just add an example here to make things clear. Build in public AM Said 1989. Build in public will be highlighted normally, but AM Said won't. Okay, so let's copy that one. Not sure why. Is it? Yeah. If we have a user mention, then we add the replace this with the hashtag, and then go to the hashtag word, and the user mention will continue to be highlighted, but the hash character will be treated normally as a non-word character, which means that it or any text that comes after it won't be highlighted. And then we have an example, which is if we go to here, yeah, for AM Said 1989 with build in public, for instance. Let's just make sure that this actually works as expected. Yeah. So CFC, yeah. AM Said will be highlighted, but build in public won't. Okay, so let's see what happens if we do something else. Let's say that we actually have the highlighted user mention, and we add a hashtag. So as you can see, if we add the hashtag before the user mention, if we add just the hash character with no characters in between, then the highlighting of the user mention will be removed, and if we start typing as we expect, then the hashtag will be highlighted, but the user mention won't be. So let's also define that behavior in the document. So if I do this and R9, we have a user mention, and afterwards no word characters in between, then the user mention, then the highlighting of the user mention will be removed, and then if we add some word characters after the hash character, then so it matches the hashtag pattern, then the hashtag part will be highlighted, but the user mention part won't. Okay, so let's see what happens in the case of hashtags, because if I remember correctly, things were slightly different. So if we add an @ character here, as you can see, the @ is not highlighted, but the hashtag character actually continues to be highlighted. Once we start adding characters in between, then the highlighting of the hashtag gets removed and the user mention is now highlighted. So as we said, like, it's a bit different from how the user mentions behave. So if we have hashtag that is highlighted, then we add an @ character immediately before with no word characters in between. Actually, let me do something. Let me get this one instead. If you have a hashtag that is highlighted, we add an immediately after before with no characters, no word characters in between, then the hashtag will continue to be highlighted, and the character will be treated normally as a non-word character. So yeah, so it won't be highlighted. However, once we start adding word characters in between, making the start of the word a valid user mention, then the highlighting of the hashtag part will be removed and the user mention will be highlighted instead. Okay, So yeah, this is how it sort of differs. This is the difference between how the user mentions and hashtags work when they come one after the other. Again, of course, like if we have two hashtags and then we erase, if we have like a hashtag and a user mention and then we erase them, then they will not be highlighted. Like the hashtag will not be highlighted, but the user mention will continue to be highlighted. Same thing if we have two. That's interesting. Why does Twitter actually highlight? Seems to be highlighting characters that come after the $sign. I'm not sure why, really. Okay, we'll have to look into that. To do, Twitter seems to be highlighting characters that come after the $ character. I'm not sure why it highlights them. I will need to figure that one out, but like this is actually the first time I noticed that. Don't think it's very strange. Yeah, I'll have to look into that because I've never noticed that behavior before, and I am not actually sure why it does that. So yeah, yeah, okay, so in general, I think, yeah, let's see what happens also with URLs, because like, of course, again, like if we have, let's just continue what we're doing. Like if we have some of these next to each other and then we delete the space in between, because as we said, we expect those two because they're both hashtags. Now they're not separated by anything, so none of them will be highlighted. Same thing with user mentions, MAS, and then if we remove that, none of them will be highlighted. If we have @ and then we just do nothing with it, and then have build in public, then we expect that the hashtag will continue to be, if we like remove the character in between, yeah, hashtag continues to be. So basically with erasing, it sort of behaves in the same way that behaves when you actually when you type. So when you erase, and it works basically in the same way. So if we, for instance, reverse this, make this @ and make this, now it will be removed, because as we know with user mentions, if they are preceded, like if a user mention is preceded immediately by a hash character with no word characters in between, then then the user mention will not be highlighted. But as we've seen here, it doesn't have to be word characters. So with no, so we need to actually make sure that with no word or non-word characters in between. And I'm assuming, but the thing is, with this, it doesn't actually, like, the highlighting is not removed, so it doesn't matter. So in this case, this bit, it has to be word characters for the highlighting of the hashtag part to be removed. So if we add non-word characters, the highlighting, the hashtag will still be highlighted, but like nothing will happen here. Once we add a word character, then this is when it actually gets highlighted, the user mention gets highlighted, and the highlighting of the hashtag gets removed. But yeah, okay, interesting. Okay, so yeah, this is something that we need to take into account. So if we have this as hashtag and it is highlighted, and we add word characters immediately before with no like non-word characters separating them, then the highlighting will be removed. Okay, so we found another behavior that needs to be okay, let me add this and make this 12. If we have a hashtag that is highlighted, then we add word characters immediately before the hashtag. To make it clear, before the hash character, with no non-word characters in between, then the highlighting of the hashtag will be removed. And again, I'm assuming same is true in this case. If I add this, it should be removed. Again, let me pump that one up, and let me just copy this. We have a user mention that is highlighted, and then we need this one. Highlighting of the hashtag, it's going to be user mention. Okay, and again, of course, same as we expect. If we start removing, once it's back to matching the user mention pattern or the hashtag pattern. In the case of hashtags, it will be highlighted again. So we've already sort of defined that behavior in general here. So when we erase character from a word that is not highlighted, it will get highlighted if it ends up matching that hashtag pattern or the user mention pattern in the case of the user mentions. Of course, same rules work with pasting. So if we come here and type hello 100 days of code, for instance, from name Saeed. Now, if we copy that, paste it here. Again, as we expect, this is highlighted, this is highlighted. That's what we actually expect from it. So yeah, so let's just add one note here that the same, the behaviors, or the okay, defined above work the same when pasting content into the editor. So just to remember that we need to handle the pasting event, which is a specific event in JavaScript, and the like it's part of the DOM event. So we need to handle that, and we need to format the character, basically the text that is being pasted as it should be, and also we should handle any like, let's say, so let me show you what I mean. Like, for instance, if we have hello AM Saeed, and then we have 100 days of code, and we copy that. So again, like, we already have, like, we don't, it's not only about formatting the text that is being pasted, it's also about handling the formatting of the existing text in the input if you need to change the formatting or the highlighting for whatever reason. So if we, for instance, paste the hashtag before the user mention, then the user mention should be the highlighting should be removed. So if we do that, as you can see, the user mention, the highlighting of the user mention is now removed, and the hashtag is highlighted. If we undo that and then add the hashtag after the user mention, as you can see, because we've added it with no non-word character separating both of them, then the hashtag wasn't highlighted, and we kept the highlighting for the user mention. If we undo that and then just add a space, as you can see, it gets the hashtag is highlighted, and we haven't done anything to the user mention because we don't need to change the highlighting. So I think this is sort of a good enough like stopping point for the first stream. Like, eventually this design document is going to act as the blueprint for the tests that we're going to implement. As I said, we're going to, for this project specifically, since we have a very well-defined behavior, we're actually going to use test-driven development. So we're going to start by writing tests for the sort of behavior that we expect from our React component, and then we're going to start to build the component to make sure that it actually works properly. We will need to look exactly at how we're going to implement these tests, because normally with React components, the best way to test it is to use the React testing library. This is what I've used before, and I found that it works really well. But the problem is, I have a feeling it might not work properly in this specific case, because, as I said, there are differences in how this basically component is going to be implemented between Chromium based browsers and Firefox. So I have a feeling that testing with the React testing library in this case is not going to actually work really well. So we might need to look into something like Selenium, because we need to test specific browser behavior. I'll look into that before we actually get to this point, and we'll see what we need to do. I'll probably continue playing around later with the Twitter input to see how it behaves and to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Like from these behaviors that I have defined here, yeah, if I have missed anything, I will add it. Eventually I'll probably share this design document and add it to the GitHub repository, just for everyone to actually take a look at it and maybe make use of it. I haven't actually built the I haven't actually created the repository yet. We'll create it together in the next stream, and we'll start the project and do the initial setup, and hopefully by then I would have figured out exactly what I need to do with the testing, and we can actually start doing that. So yeah, I hope you can join me in the next stream, and yeah, let me know in the comments below. The video will be available on both YouTube and Twitch. I think with Twitch it gets removed after a while, but with YouTube it will stay there. So yeah, you can comment on it and yeah, let me know exactly what are your thoughts, and if you have anything that you think maybe I've done wrong or something, just let me know, and we can address it in the next stream. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and see you in the next one. Yeah, bye bye.